I'm a big banter girl. I love reading about two people flirting in books. I love reading. I love it so much. I have read 30 books in 2024 so far, and here are all of the books from worst to best. I'm gonna try to do it in a very swift fashion, although I talk a lot. Bear with me. I'm gonna start from my 1-star rated books, and the first one is Hush Hush by Lucia Franco. I did not finish this book. This is a spicy romance novel. We're following a character that I didn't necessarily connect with. Her and her best friend, their dialogue together, it's like the blind leading the blind. I love women empowerment. I love that she is freely opening herself to explore her sexuality, but I would also like for there to be a balance of the main character having some kind of depth, maybe a little bit wiser in certain decision making in her life. Maybe she did later on in the book, I just didn't stick around long enough to notice. The next book is Broken Bonds by Jay Bree. This is another book that I DNF'd. Another dark romance, spicy book. I feel like all of the books that I have under 1 star are spicy or dark romance books, but there are a lot of books that I like that are in that genre that I do enjoy. Later on in this video, obviously I will be pointing it out, but Broken Bonds, I feel like it had a great idea. The plot sounded good and I wanted to like this, but the writing is frustrating. It read very immature to me, which shouldn't be the case because this is an adult romance novel. I went up to 32 pages of this book and I just had to call it quits. Let there be another way for this author to please express their feelings other than the word because there's gotta be other ways. 6 to 10 words a page is not an exaggeration. I might even be kind of underestimating that. It's a lot to the point where I was like, I can't go on like this anymore. In this world, there's people who are gifted with powers and those who don't have powers who are not considered gifted. Those who are gifted, they have bonds, literally biological bonds, kind of like mates in the fantasy or fate world. But in this case, you can have more than one bond. It is a reverse harem story. Could have been cool had the writing been better. But if you don't care so much about the writing, maybe you'd be into this. I wasn't. Before I go on anymore, these are my opinions, of course, and we would probably have different opinions, and that's okay. I don't want my opinions to sway yours, or if you really love these books that I'm rating 1 or 2 or 3 stars, that's good. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for us that we are able to come together and share different opinions. Maybe we share some, maybe we don't. And that's okay. The third book is Sicko by Amo Jones. This is another book that I thought I was gonna love because I know that Amo Jones is quite a popular author in this genre, and I know a lot of you like her writing as well. This is the first book that I ever read of hers. Maybe I will read more. No, I know I'm gonna read more from Amo Jones. It's just like this book, it wasn't for me. The title is Sicko, and it literally is so sick and twisted. I was really enjoying the book in the beginning. It had a good idea as well. It is about a foster brother and foster sister developing likeness to each other. There is a biker gang involved. There's also a lot of really sensitive topics involved that I feel like in the very end were solved in a way that just wasn't, it didn't feel like a good way to solve those problems. It didn't feel realistic, even though I know that this is fiction and it shouldn't be that realistic, but it felt like some of the ways that they solved some of the really complex issues that are presently happening in our world was just a cop-out. And I've never read Wattpad before, but from how people describe Wattpad, this is exactly what that book gave. It was just like things are happening left and right that I'm like, where is this coming from and why is it necessary? Now we are on to our 2-star rated books in this category. The first one is One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. I really also wanted to like these books. You guys, if you couldn't tell already, I want to like the books that I'm reading, but sometimes they just fall flat. One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. It is a modern day Romeo and Juliet retelling. the two rival families are actually underground wizards and witches in present day New York. Isn't that concept so interesting? But the reason why I rated it 2 stars is because the structure of the story, chapters were super long. The timelines going back and forth didn't make sense. So many things were happening that I'm like, wait, who died? When did this person die? Are they actually alive? And I know that that's really the premise of Romeo and Juliet, but it was just so confusing to me. And maybe that was me. Maybe I just wasn't in the right state of mind when I was reading it, but I tried to read this book 2 separate times and it just did not work out for me. Therefore, I gave it 2 stars. Now, before I tell you about the next book in this category, tropes that I do not like, or just anything that has to do with this in books, like I typically sway away from. Immediately it turns me off as I'm reading it. Immediately I'm talking crap about the characters that are doing this. 1, miscommunication tropes, just not communicating at all to where the problem is getting prolonged. And lying. If there's no need to lie, we don't need to lie. But if it's justifiable, I understand the lies. I get it. But just generally speaking, I don't like miscommunication, not communicating, and lying. And this next book is called Never Lie by Freida McFadden. And I should have known that this book was not for me. I shouldn't have read this book. The whole essence of this book is about lying. And I should have stopped there, but I was really intrigued. We're following a couple who visits a house that they thought they were gonna buy. Once they visited this house, they get stranded there, they get snowed in. As they were staying there, all of these mysterious things started happening. Throughout all of this, they discover, or one of them discovers, things that were actually truly happening in this house, because the person that was previously living in this house was a psychiatrist. She recorded all of her therapy sessions, and as she was listening to those recordings, she uncovers a lot of things that could potentially connect to the present day, and that's where the story unfolds. That's why I kept listening to it, because I was intrigued. But then at the very end, I should have known. It just wasn't for me. The ending felt flat. It got interesting until it didn't, and that was it. Next is Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. This is the first book that I read of Abby Jimenez. I know that a lot of you romance girlies really love Abby Jimenez. I will give her another shot, but this book was not for me. The only thing that I really loved about this book was that the setting is in the Valley here in LA, and I was like, ooh, shout out! Because I haven't read a book that is set in the Valley. I haven't read my cities, my town in any book, so that I thought that that was really cool. But that was pretty much it. Again, along the lines of miscommunication, withholding information. The main character in the story really dragged out a problem because she didn't want to be upfront and honest about something. And to me, I did not like that. I didn't appreciate that. I was just kind of getting annoyed, therefore I wasn't connected to the characters. I wasn't really rooting for her and was rooting for everyone else. But with that being said, I did really like the other characters that were in the story besides the female main character. I know that there's another book in the series featuring the other characters in the book, so maybe I'll read those, but this one, it wasn't for me. We have reached our 3-star rated books. These books, they were okay. I didn't mind that I read them. I thought they were cool. I thought they were mid. Didn't love it, didn't hate it. I just sort of liked it. That's pretty much what 3 stars are for me. The first book is The Risk by S.T. Abbey. I thought that this was a really interesting concept. This was like 192 pages. If your version of Palate Cleanse is a romance that has a little bit of spice in it, this would probably be for you. I like to read palate cleanses from time to time. Sometimes mine are spicy books, sometimes mine is just an easy breezy romance novel. But this one, it was like I said, 192 pages. We're following an FBI agent who has been trying to crack the case and solve the series of serial murders that have been taking place, and they cannot find the serial murderer. He then develops a love interest with a really great woman who happens to unfortunately be the serial killer that he's been looking for. Isn't that a cool concept? This is a series, so I think that there's like more than 3 books in this series. It could be an easy read to follow from time to time, but yeah, it was pretty cool. Next is Masters of Restraint by Inez Johnson, and in the title of Restraint, and master, you can guess that this is a dark romance novel or a contemporary romance novel. This features BDSM, okay? This also features a love interest with the female main character and her boss. So if you're into like that office romance, you don't mind a little bit of BDSM. They also feature a kink club. So I'm just warning you on what you might get in this book. I did rate it as 3 stars because it was an easy read, nothing too complex, nothing too deep. It was cool. Yeah, it's interesting. There's also a little bit of reverse harem in there for you. So if you're curious, this could be something that you could just read really quickly. You might like it. Next is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson, I believe. Benjamin Stevenson, yep. And it's exactly what the title says. That's what the book is about. Everyone in the main character's family has killed someone. So this is an audiobook exclusively, I believe, but the way that this is narrated is kind of interesting because they break that fourth wall. At some points, they call out the expected framework that you would get from thriller novels, but they do it in kind of a clever way, and there's a lot of humor tied into it. The reason why I rated it 3 stars is because the ending kind of fell flat for me. The book really does get interesting as they go through the family's history of the different murders that took place in the main character's life and why, but yeah, it's cool. I think if you are into audiobooks, this could be something that you'd be interested in. Very easy to listen to. It's not like truly scary. It's more of a mystery audiobook than anything. I haven't listened to anything like this, so I thought that it was cool. Next is The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. This is also another thriller that I read about a couple that is married where the husband has been unfaithful to his wife. He cheats on her with a younger lady. This younger lady turns up dead, and he is so convinced and he truly believes that he has nothing to do with this. So who else does he hire? Of course, he has to hire the best lawyer in town, which happens to be his wife. Honestly, I don't remember too much about how I felt reading this. It was just like, oh, interesting concept. At the end, I was like, I think I was kind of expecting it, so that's why I rated it 3 stars. It didn't leave a significant impact. It didn't really leave a lasting mark in my thoughts where I was just like, I can't believe it happened like that. So that's why I rated it 3 stars. Next is The Beauty of Humanity Movement. I listened to this in preparation for my trip to Vietnam. I wanted to read or listen to a book where the setting is in the location that I'll be visiting, and I'm so happy that I did that because it kind of gave me a different appreciation, or more of an appreciation, for the location that I was visiting, because this book, it covers 4 different perspectives of Vietnamese people, 3 of which live in Vietnam and 1 is a Vietnamese American. So it covers how they think and what it's like being a Vietnamese person experiencing the war or post-war, and they cover a lot of different locations in Vietnam, North and South. So I felt educated just in time for my vacation. It's not a book that I would typically go for. I really only did it for educational purposes, and I got what I got. Next is Beautiful Things by Emily Rath. This is a historical romance novel set in the Renaissance era. We are following, I forgot the main character's name, but she is someone who is anti-marriage, but she just so happens to be invited to the Duchess's house, and she ends up liking 3 of the men that is living in the Duchess's house. She doesn't want to marry any of them, but she does like them. So this does have reverse harem tropes. It does get really spicy. Just imagine Bridgerton, but like MMMF. A little bit sexier. Yeah, that's how I would describe it. The only thing is, I didn't know this when I was reading it. This is part of a series, so I was left with a cliffhanger. If you're open to that kind of stuff, you're looking for a Renaissance, posh, spicy novel, this is a good one to recommend to you. Next is The Sweetest Revenge by Lizzie Dent. This is I would say more of a women's fiction, but it is a romance novel. We are following Amy Duffy. She had a really, really traumatic, embarrassing moment that happened to her years back where it was blasted, went viral on social media. She carries on that shame with her to her present day life. It's been holding her back, and ever since this moment, she feels like she can't move on or move forward with her life. This is a really flawed character where you almost really relate to her, and you also want to shake her at the same time. Get out of there, like get out of this shameful place. Move on with your life. So this book kind of takes you through her journey with that, with her new job, friends, relationships. It's interesting. It just wasn't anything significant to me, but I thought that it was an interesting read. And this is, I think, the only book that I have here in 3.5 or 4 stars. Honestly, I don't know where to place this book in my ratings, but I'm putting it right here because this is a dark, probably the darkest romance that I've ever read before. It is Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin. This book really put me in several different states of emotions and just awe and shock and sadness. The main character, she goes through so much. This is a pirate story. We are following Bennett, who is a pirate herself. She's worked her way up in the ranks of this ship. She goes through a series of unfortunate events, honestly, to say the least. But this is MMF, this is reverse harem, and I cannot tell you any more than you just have to read it for yourself and decide for yourself on how you feel about this, because I can guarantee you have never read anything like this. The only thing I'll say, again, historical romance novel, MMF, very, very dark. Read your trigger warnings for this. Okay, I think I may have messed up. Next is Flawless by Elsie Silver. I think I would accurately rate this more to be 3.5, but on Goodreads I did put it under 4 stars because I enjoyed reading this. I thought that it was a very easy romance book to read, and it's part of a series. This is my first cowboy book, cowboy romance that I've ever read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It wasn't anything that I was amazed by. I thought that the dialogue, the dynamic between the two characters, the love interest, I thought it was interesting. The initial attraction to the main characters were a little bit silly, but other than that, it was very easy. I read this as a palate cleanse book, so it's cool. Now, we are approaching all of my 4-star rated books. A good chunk of everything that I've read this year so far has been rated 4 stars because, listen, I'm only gonna reach for books that I know I'm gonna like. I know my taste at this point. So thankfully, I have a lot of books in this category. It would be really concerning if I kept reading books that I've been rating 1 stars because, like, what am I doing? Why do I keep putting myself in that situation? But no, a lot of the books I've been reading have been 4 stars, thankfully. Starting with Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. We are following a retired tennis player who comes back into the picture because a new tennis player is about to beat her championship record, and she doesn't want that to happen. She is like, no, baby, I'm gonna keep my record. I'm gonna come back in the scene and prevent anyone from overstepping on that record. But the reason why I really enjoyed this is because the perspective of the protagonist, Carrie Soto, it's really admirable to see someone with this level of confidence, especially knowing in the sports world you always have something to prove. There's always going to be people doubting you, and it's just the matter of like the trials and tribulations that occurred for her to get to this spot, and so many life things just along the way. It's just a very, very interesting female main character to read, and that's why I really enjoyed this. And it's more about her growth, her overcoming all of the challenges, and I loved every bit of it. I did cry, it did pull at my heartstrings, so yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Next book is The Secret Lives of Church Girls by Disha Philyaw. This is another book with an interesting concept that I haven't read before. It is a compilation of short stories about girls and women behind closed doors. Each story explores the unique relationships with them and their religion, or trying to have a relationship with their religion, kind of grappling with your identity. It really embodies sinning, doubt, and more specifically being a woman and a girl in the context of your religious beliefs. Next is Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. I love this book. I love Heir of Fire. This is, I believe, the turning point in the series to where things really activate, I guess, in the story. Without saying too much, it's just the part of the book where the female main character that we're following, she is just in her self-loathing era. So watching her go through all of the, I guess, the hate towards herself and kind of hating the person that she is, it's interesting to read and interesting to root for, because you know that she's going to overcome this. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book, especially since we meet more characters. So loved Heir of Fire. The next book is So Let Them Burn by Camila Cole. Oh my gosh, I'm excited about this book because this is a series, a Jamaican-inspired fantasy series, came out just this year, so I'm really curious to see where this story goes. But I loved the setting of this book. It was really refreshing, set in an island that is tropical. I feel like I don't really get that much in fantasy books. I always picture maybe like a country, somewhere in Europe, never somewhere like in an island or somewhere tropical or Jamaica. Very refreshing. The story revolves around two sisters where one of them is named Farron. She is blessed by the gods with divine power, and she is the savior of this island because she has saved this island in the past from the Langley Empire. The Langley Empire, they are the exclusive empire who has possessions to dragons. There's dragons in this story. I love stories with dragons in it, but Farron was the only one that was able to save her entire island from the Langley Empire and their dragons. That is until Farron's sister discovers that she actually has a bond with one of the dragons. So everything they know, everything they grew up to know, is actually not what they think it is. How is Farron's sister able to have a bond with a dragon? Where does the story go from here? And that's where it gets interesting. So yes, this is the first book. I feel like it's just world building. Of course, they're kind of setting it up, so that's why I'm more curious about the second book, and that's why it only got 4 stars. But 4 stars is still high on my rating. I still really enjoyed this book very much. Okay, next is Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. Again, this is part of the Throne of Glass series. I read Tower of Dawn and Empire Storms in tandem together. I was doing the tandem reading 2 books at a time, going back and forth. Tower of Dawn is the book that I was just like, ugh. Every time that I got to the book, I was like, ugh. But the only reason why I rated it so high, because this is a very critical book in the series, of course. But the only thing is, the characters that we're following in this book are the ones that not favorable to me. They're still very cool, still love them, still have a special place in my heart for them. But at the time when I was reading it, I was just like, I don't really care about these characters, but I have to care because they're doing something mission critical. You know what I mean? Next is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Sorry, I still don't know how to pronounce that name. This is adult fiction with magical realism. I really enjoyed this book. People were saying that this book is very predictable, they saw it all coming, but it's not about the ending, it's about the journey. Like, truly, it really is about the journey. This story is centered around the Midnight Library. It's kind of like a multiverse, different versions of yourselves depending on choices that you've made or did not make in life. There's a book for each one of those types of lives that you could have had. And the main character that we're following, she is in a constant deep state of regret. She's very shoulda, coulda, woulda type of girl. And I know a lot of us could be like that from time to time. This is like the perfect book to read when you're kind of just like getting lost in your thoughts of regret, or if you just forget to count your blessings and counting your problems instead. This is a refreshing book. It was a good reminder to me. I really appreciated it. The next book is The Idea of You by Robin Lee. I read this book before watching the Amazon Prime adaptation of of this, although I knew that I only wanted to read this because I wanted to watch that movie with Anne Hathaway. I'm so happy that I did do it this way because it really just goes deeper into the internal battle between the main character convincing herself to be with someone, also convincing herself to not be with someone. I feel like a lot of us can relate in that way, where you know you're exploring something new, a potential new relationship, and you're like, how much of myself do I want to give right now? Should I even see this through? So all of those questions are portrayed in the book. This really goes a little bit deeper, and to some people, they didn't really enjoy the fact of why is she having so much internal battle when you know what you want, just go for it. But sometimes it's really not that easy. And not to mention the banter was really, really good. That's just me though. Next is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This I enjoyed. I enjoyed this a lot. I thought that the banter was great. This is a romantasy novel, or actually it's the first book in a trilogy. So a lot of this is kind of just like world building. The magic system is a little bit vague. You understand it, but also like, why is it that way? Why is this the main conflict? Like I said, it is a romantasy with an emphasis on romance. I would consider the fantasy to be more of a subplot. And keep in mind, this is YA. So to me, actually, I thought that this was a pretty mature YA. It is a little silly, a little bit predictable, but at the end of the day, it's a very simple and easy read. Sometimes you just need something like that. It doesn't have to be so serious all the time, you know what I'm saying? The reason why I really liked this book was the banter was good. It's interesting because there's certain battles and trials. People have been saying like the Hunger Games. I see the essence of that because there are trials where the candidates in these trials are really dueling it out. But yeah, it's a very easy read. I enjoyed the banter enough and the flirting enough that I didn't really care about anything else. I will be reading the second book, of course. I know that there's a novella after this, but I'm considering skipping the novella and then just going straight to the second book. I don't know yet. Let me know if I should do that, if I could just skip Powerful and just go straight to Reckless. Next is a thriller by Ashley Flowers. This is called All Good People Here. I picked this book up from Target because I was pleasantly surprised to see that Ashley Flowers, the host of the true crime podcast series, Crime Junkie, I was like, girl, what are you doing here? So I picked it up, I read the book, and I enjoyed it. Yeah, I did. I read this like as if she was the one narrating it, like I was kind of hearing it in her Crime Junkie podcast voice, but I enjoyed this. You know why? Because even though this is just another typical small town thriller novel or mystery novel, I enjoyed it because the deaths that took place is not the main plot. The message that the book is trying to convey is what it would be like as a family to be dealing with a missing person, dealing with the media, the law enforcement, the public opinion, all of this swaying, getting to the bottom of finding the killer. There's so many factors that play a role in just finding someone. It's like, man, dealing with the media and how people look at you when you look a certain way when you were in the news, the public opinion, spreading rumors, law enforcement not really doing shit. Ooh, okay, we're finally getting to the end. We're so close there. But now these are my 4.5 star rated books. The first one is Funny Story by Emily Henry. I freaking love this book. I love Emily Henry. Let's just put that out there, okay? Am I biased? Maybe. But I love this book because we are following two people who recently got dumped. They end up moving in together and they develop something that's unexpected. Their friendship, their acquaintanceship blossoms into something more, potentially. It takes us through that journey. The reason why I love this book is the banter. I'm a big banter girl. I love reading about two people flirting in books. That is That is my jam. I want to take notes. I want to observe on how your play on words, okay? Your play on words. Again, it's the banter for me. And they had a really, really good one. I love the structure of this novel. It made sense. Like, she just does something with her stories to make it a little bit more digestible. And not only that, the emotions, like how she writes emotions, it makes sense to me. Like, I would never imagine writing or portraying how I'm feeling in the way that she writes it, to make it more relatable, to make it seem more real that I'm feeling those emotions too. Emily Henry just she just hits it. She nails it every time when she talks about feelings and how to portray that in words, metaphorically speaking or literally speaking. She just does it so well. Next is Empire of Storms. This is rated 4.5 stars for me. This is the book that I was tandem reading Tower of Dawn with, and the reason why this is rated a little bit higher is because in this book we're following the characters that I really loved. Okay, the mission in this book felt just more entertaining to me, and that's why I rated it 4.5 stars. We are finally at my 5-star rated books. I have 4 books in my 5-star rating category, and one of them, I don't even know if it should be here, and that is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. I just put it here. It feels weird for me to put it in my 5-star ratings because this is a biography of her real life. It's almost like liking a post from your feed and it's someone sharing something tragic about their life, like their dog died or like they're sick or something, and you're like, do I like this post? What do I do right now? That's what I feel about putting Jennette McCurdy's book in this section, but nonetheless, I did listen to this book. I didn't read it, and the reason why I listened to it is because I know that she was narrating it. It just felt that much more impactful to me, hearing her tone and how she says certain dialogue from her perspective, and it just felt more real, more raw coming from her voice, and knowing that she's reading about her experiences, I respected it a little bit more. She tells a story really well. Really interesting biography. I would recommend you read it if you haven't already. I know a lot of people have been talking about this, but this is a good one to read. Okay, next is Love Radio by Ebony Liddell. I can't believe that this is on here. This is a YA romance novel. I really don't rate YA this high. I am far from being a young adult. I appreciated this story a lot. We're following 2 high schoolers who are navigating potentially getting into a relationship while knowing more about each other. They're kind of like in their dating phase or talking phase, but also at the same time getting to know who they are coming into their adolescence and all of the complications that happen navigating this very sensitive time in your life. And the way that they handle their conflicts is so healthy, so respectable. I feel like this book should be a manual and it should be considered as a guide on how to approach relationships, whether if you're a young adult or an adult like myself, because there's a lot to learn from these 2 characters. It's just really refreshing to read about dealing with conflicts in a healthy way, and it's a really cute book. The love language around music, the love language around hair, I loved every bit of it. I would recommend this. If you're into romance, please give this book a shot. Okay, we are down to our last 2 books, and you guessed it, they are part of the Throne of Glass series. The next one I will mention is Queen of Shadows, 5 freaking stars. Oh my gosh, I just love this book so much because coming from Heir of Fire to where the main character was in her self-loathing era and coming out on the other side of that in Queen of Shadows, this was the book that I was just like, hell yeah, I was so excited, rooting for her. Like, all of the good things that I was finally waiting for happened in this book until, things kind of fall apart again, But anyways, this was the book that I was like, I love every single second, everything about this. And then finally, Kingdom of Ash, the last book in this series. They ended this series so beautifully. While there are some opportunities potentially for a novella, I don't know, a spin-off perhaps, I still feel like this ended really beautifully. and there were a lot of parts where it tugged at my heartstrings. At one point, Eddie came out of the bedroom onto the loft. He was holding his video game controller and he's like, "Are you okay?" "No, I'm not." He found me bawling my eyes out. There was a lot of tears that happened. It just like, it really hits you here. If you haven't read Throne of Glass, and I know that this is a book that a lot of people have been talking about, as well as the ACOTAR series, they are all really well deserved, and that's why there's such a cult following around them. I would say be patient with this series because it really does take a turn later on in the later books that you read, but Kingdom of Ash, I loved every bit about it. Wow. Did you hear enough of me talking? I'm so sorry. That was a lot. Those are all the books that I've read so far in 2024. It feels like it wasn't that much, but also going back and reminiscing on these books that I've read, it's like, wow, I lived a lot of lives knowing about all of the different books, different eras that I went through, different perspectives that I lived. It's great. I love reading. I love it so much. But please let me know down below what books you're looking forward to reading this year. Were there any books that you're like, I do not agree with you, and that's okay. We're here to coexist with different opinions. I hope that I didn't bore you to death. If you're still here, thank you so much. My name is Emmy. Please make sure that you like this video, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss another one. I really, really appreciate you, and thank you.